Hi everyone, my name is Mark Verhelsi Francisco, and today we are going to talk about data encryption. So we are going to define data encryption. We are also going to talk about why we actually need to use data encryption and some common use case scenarios for the real world of data encryption. And we are also going to see the data breaches that happen in the real world, and we are also going to check on some apps on like the apps that have end-to-end encryption that we commonly use in our day-to-day, and also we are going to check on tips on how we could protect our own data. Okay, and hopefully you enjoy my short presentation. Thank you.
Data encryption for my course IS201 Computer Ethics. And on this comic strip, you would see that someone is actually sending out a data. And if you don't have the way to encrypt it, then we wouldn't be able to understand it. That it's actually being sent out in Navajo words for 0 and 1. So what is data encryption? So data encryption is translating data into another form that may seem meaningless, but if we actually have the right decryption key, it can be decrypted back to its original form. An encrypted form of data is called plain text, something that we can actually understand or read, while the encrypted one is referred to as ciphertext. So why do we need to encrypt data? So because in this digital world, data can be used by cyber criminals to commit fraud and identity theft. In order to protect our data, we need to encrypt it, whether it is stored in our computers or transmitting it over the internet or some other networks. Data encryption ensures the confidentiality and integrity of information being sent and allows only authorized users to view its content. This is same as with the comic strip that we had earlier, that we'd want to make sure that our data is encrypted and is only sent or understood or read by the person intended, or the person where we intend the message to be sent. For the use case scenarios, so we have here the database. For database, normally what we encrypt would be the passwords for in our data fields. Now, I think that we should also encrypt the PII, or the personally identifiable information, and that would actually include something that directly identifies the name of the person, the address, social security number, but there are also some things that are indirectly identifiable or directly identifies a person, like the gender, the race, the date of birth, or the geographic location. So for me, I think that this is something that we should also encrypt because, if a database administrator would be looking at it, it's not only the passwords that are encrypted, but also the information of the person. Because, say for example, even if you have the password encrypted, but you have this information on a separate table, then they would still be able to like gather all this data, or probably some people would be easily able to sniff out this information. So at least to make it a bit harder for them. Now, cloud storage. So when it comes to cloud storage, we'd want to ensure that our data storage is encrypted, the application data, the data, and the object storage. So if we are to choose a cloud storage or cloud computing provider, it would be best that it is only us who has the key or access to the storage, because some other providers, aside from you having the key to it, they also have the access to your cloud storage, which you don't want. Because, say for example, if the government wants to get that information, then they would be able to provide that information, and that would actually be a problem with when it comes to our privacy. But then again, um, that is something that like has happened with Apple, and you can actually also check it over the internet, wherein the government is asking Apple to provide information, but the phone actually has the or the cloud storage has the PIN, so they wouldn't be also able to access it not unless the user provides that PIN code. Another is compliance and payment. So again, we'd want to make sure that when we have our credit card information, it's encrypted from end to end. So when we send out like the credit card number, the code, or the address that we have, we'd want to make sure that it only reaches the destination server and it cannot be sniffed in the middle to gain access to our information. Next is the application for email, chat, and SMS. So like there are confidential information that we send out through the email or probably in chat, like when we do some video calls or when we send out the photos. We don't want like those information to be leaked and be sniffed by cyber criminals. And also our conversation, we don't want anyone listening to it. Data breach. So I got here like Adobe Creative Cloud, wherein they actually had, let me check on my, okay, so for Adobe Cloud in 2013, they actually had 153 million user records that was actually reported to be hacked and stolen, but um, it ended up like I'm sorry, Adobe paying 1.1 million in dollars in legal fees. And it's also reported in 2016 that the customers were actually paid $1 million. This would be for like settlement claims for violating also the Customer Records Act and unfair business practices. So if you're gonna look on this amount, if we actually have our own company and we don't protect our data, we might end up closing our company or probably selling it because we are no longer able to pay for the what do you call this? The we won't be able to pay for the claim or to settle the amount that we actually need to pay. And of course, aside from that, people or consumers would lose our trust in our company. Next is Yahoo. So this one is really big because they had the biggest data breach in history in 2013 or 14 when it impacts 3 billion user accounts, where it compromised the names, the date of birth, email addresses and password, and security questions and answers of 1 billion user accounts. And in 2017, they actually revised that to be 3 billion user accounts. So imagine, that would be a lot of data or personal information. That's why, again, when we talk about database, it would be best not to just encrypt the password, but might as well also encrypt this personal identifiable information. Now, in 2016 and 2012, LinkedIn had a server leak when it comes to user information, and they actually had it resolved by resetting the password for the affected accounts. And the hacker actually posted this one in a like a blog site, and it's actually selling it for just 5 bitcoins for the 5 million link user accounts. So it was like around $2,000 at the time. So end-to-end encryption. So we have here some suggested apps that actually can help protect us um, with our data or the information that we send out to the internet. So why do we have Facebook Messenger or Telegram? So again, by default, they don't have end-to-end encryption, but they have this similar way of encrypting it. When you go to Facebook Messenger secret conversation, it is actually encrypted end-to-end. Similarly as with Telegram, they have like I think what we call secret chats. Now, um, for the difference probably between the two would be Telegram is actually open source, so users can actually check on the code and scrutinize it, and if there's like a hole in it, probably it can be addressed easily and raised to the programmer or the software engineers. Next is so we have Signal, Viber, and WhatsApp. So probably we're familiar with Viber, WhatsApp, and now with Signal, it's also open source, same as with Telegram. The good thing about this is that it encrypts video messaging aside from just take the text messages. And um, again, the difference with Viber is that Viber is actually closed source. Say they don't have the source that can be seen or like can be checked by users. Now, for Signal, say for example, you send out a photo and it's being transmitted, and it's actually in blurred, or if somebody tried to sniff the information, it would be blurred instead of seeing the actual picture. So which is still good, because it protects again your privacy. Now for Proton Mail, the good thing about this one is again encrypted end to end, and it's also based in Switzerland. So when it comes to privacy, it would be protected even if somebody would, or like probably a government would ask for this information. Well, they would be giving it because again, it is because Switzerland has this strict policy when it comes to privacy. So what we have here would be tips to protect our data. So first is don't access personal or financial data with public Wi-Fi. I think that would be common, and because again, if we make a purchase with our credit card using public Wi-Fi, then it may register those information through their network, and it could also be a non-secured network. All right, so we could probably use some VPN, and next is our virtual private network. Turn off anything that you don't need. So aside from turning it off, probably the good thing about this is you can also delete the app. If you don't need it, don't use it. And also try to protect yourself from allowing apps to use your GPS or the wireless connection, or probably asking your contacts, or asking your messaging apps, email addresses, or contacts perhaps, because some apps would tend to ask if you allow it, then just deny the access, because eventually, or towards the end of the questions, you would still be able to access the app. So, but having said that, if you have that kind of app asking you unrelated access to your phone's like contacts, then I would suggest that it's not really a good app, or it's not a secured app. Might as well just not install it at all. Next is choose your apps wisely. So, having said that, same as with turning off the apps that you don't need, or probably trying to access your location. So, again, try to, as much as possible, scrutinize the app before even sharing your email address or creating an account for it. Next is use a password, a lock code, or encryption. So nowadays, people would be using a two-factor authentication that would allow, aside from logging in with a passcode, it would be authenticating using our mobile phone, and we have the authority to actually allow it or not. So this is also a good thing, because if somebody tries to access our account, like our mail, then there will be a notification for us to authorize it. So we know that if we're not the one using it, then somebody's trying to access it. Now, be skeptical about links and attachments. When we try to use our mail, make sure that we don't open links or click on links or attachments. We try to check on that's the sender, if it's really a valid or something, a trustworthy sender. Like an example would be checking on their domain, like if we're working with, say for example, with the BPI, so they send out an email to say like check on password. Of course, they wouldn't be sending out. But then again, if you try to check on the sender, the domain would actually not be like a bpi.com, but it would be something else. But it would be like something like customer service or bpi.customer.com. So that alone would tell us that it's not safe to actually click on the links or check on the attachment. Might as well mark it as spam. So when you say BPI, it's actually Bank of the Philippine Islands. It's one of the banks here in the Philippines. Next is trace and erase. Trace or erase. So for this one, we'd want to make sure again, if we don't use the app, we'd want to actually remove it. And also like when we use like messaging apps, we'd want to have like the feature of Signal that could also self-destruct the the data that we have. And protection for it would be if our data is lost or stolen, we have a way of tracing it, and we also have a way of erasing this information. If say for example, if there will be failed login attempts. All right, so I got here the sources where I got the information that I've shared with you, and basically that's it. And thank you so much for checking on the my presentation. And once again, my name is Mark, and have a great day. Bye.